Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 245 of Humanity Rising. As most of you know, I've been gone for a few days from last Friday through this morning. I went with my family to Yosemite National Park. And I must say, Yosemite is one of the true wonders of the world. Just to be in the Yosemite Valley and be part of a ecosystem that was carved out of solid granite rock over millions of years by glaciers just slowly grinding, Half Dome and El Capitan. El Capitan is a sheer rock face that goes 3,000 feet straight up, and you stand at the base of El Capitan and you just look up and you go, whoa. And there's waterfalls coming in from the Sierra Nevadas, the Rocky Mountains, and the snow melt is very strong, and the waterfalls are just gushing with the power and the sound of, thousands of tons of water just racing through the air and crashing onto the rocks. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. We think of going to Central Park in New York or Vondel Park in Amsterdam, different parks in urban centers, and that's beautiful and it's wonderful, but it's a whole different order of magnitude to go out in the raw nature and feel as small as human beings should feel in the face of the grandeur of the natural ecosystem. So it was a wonderful time of nature immersion, and I feel revitalized and empowered and just loving just now being back on Humanity Rising for our 245th day. So thank you, everyone. And we'd like to begin, as we always do, by just centering ourselves in our bodies, taking a few moments, taking a few deep breaths, closing our eyes if you can, and just focusing on your heart. Listening to your heartbeat. Just take a minute to listen to your heartbeat in a spirit of gratitude and thanksgiving that your heart's beating, that you're alive, that we're alive together at this extraordinary moment in the human journey. Thank you, everyone. Now, with an open heart and a heart full of gratitude for each and every one of you joining our session today, I would like to commence our program, which will be focused on sound, by setting a context for our consideration of the healing power of sound. Recently, I've been reading a monumental book by Thomas Machiavelli called The Shape of Ancient Thought. And in that book, he describes the ancient conversation between India and Sumer and Babylon and Egypt and Greece in the 7th, 6th, and 5th centuries BC, about 2,500 years ago. And he points out that the sophistication of the ancients was such that they understood that the movement of the planets and the stars and the octaves of music and the fifths of music were interrelated and all revolved around sacred geometry, what is known as the Platonic forms, that there was a relationship between hexagon and triangles and squares and octagons, and the way the planets and the stars were moving through the heavenly spheres and the musical scales and number. So just think for a moment, an understanding that brought astronomy, geometry, mathematics, and sound together into a seamless whole. That was the wisdom of the ancients that we've lost many, many centuries ago and are beginning to rediscover as we begin to understand what Western civilization forgot, that we are in a single integrated totality. And that, of course, was the reason why Pythagoras, the great philosopher of the 6th century BC in Greece, who discerned the relationship between geometry and number and sound, that all number and all geometry and all planetary orbits and spirals through space, all of them are making certain kinds of sounds. And it's said that Pythagoras could sit so quietly in himself in such a deep meditation that he could hear the sound of Saturn as distinct from the sound of Mars. Take that in for just a second. If we sit quietly, maybe we can hear the birds chirp outside. We can hear the traffic. Think about sitting so quietly that you could hear the sound of Mars or the moon or Venus. And that, of course, was the origin of chanting, the understanding that by uttering sounds at certain frequencies, you could attain power to move mountains or to heal. So from the beginning of Humanity Rising, we've had a number of sessions on sound. About 2 weeks ago, we heard from Gary Malkin on vibrational healing. We've had Kathleen Riley convene a number of sessions on sacred sound. And today we are very, very privileged to have two people who've dedicated their entire lives to the vibrational healing of sound. Andi and Jonathan Goldman, who have written a number of books, The Divine Name, 7 healing sounds, chakra frequencies. They have formed, in fact, an entire association of sound healers, and they've done a number of award-winning videos and documentaries on sound. They really dedicated their lives to healing through sound and understanding and moral development through sound. And so I want to welcome you, Andi and Jonathan, to Humanity Rising. And I thought a good way to start our dialogue today would be just to ask you to tell your journeys of how you came together in a way that sound, in effect, captured your lives, because that's such a deep and ancient way of mediating our experience to the larger reality. So just tell us your story of your journey into sound, and then we can dialogue from there. But welcome.
Jim, thank you so much. We are delighted to be here and to share our journeys, and just thank you very much for inviting us.
It's a real honor and a privilege to be here sharing with you. And so thank you for this experience with everyone who's tuning in now and later. So may our words, our thoughts, our feelings manifest into the greatest light and love for everyone who is watching, hearing, and resonating with us. So we give thanks.
And, you know, Jim, I have to say that I love the opening meditation, and I'm reminded of something that we have up on our shelf right here, and it says, listen with the ear of your heart. And when you were doing your meditation, that just kept flashing into my consciousness. So we all listen with the ear of our heart. And so we will now share our journey. Right. Jonathan, you start.
And it was also really beautiful, all the things that you said. Boy, one could expound upon that information for quite a while. And perhaps we will, or perhaps we'll go in other places. I'll tell you about me and where I came from and stuff like that. I grew up in the New York, New Jersey area. Went to Boston University Film School. But I was playing in rock and roll bands this entire time. And it was great. I won't go into my merits, but I had some, if you like, accolades when I was growing up. And somewhere right around 1979, I was playing at a seaside bar in Marshfield, Massachusetts, which is on Cape Cod. And I remember strapping on my Fender Stratocaster from a break, walking to the microphone, starting to sing, and all of a sudden, I became aware of something. And I'd been performing for, 15 years at least professionally. But all of a sudden I had the thought, as I looked out at the audience, I became aware that the ambiance of the club was one of negativity and violence. And a lot of this was due to the alcohol and the other intoxicants that people were imbibing it, no question. But I also realized that the music that I was creating at that time, so this is not to denigrate rock and roll at all, but the music that I was creating at that time, and we'll talk about intention later, was, shall we say, one that was not helping the ambiance at all. And is really assisting in the negativity and the violence. And I thought, what if music can be used to make people feel good? I'd never had that thought before. What, because it was always, look at me, et cetera. And what if music can be used to make people feel good? And within about a week and a half, that thought shifted just a little bit. And it became, what if sound can be used to heal? And at the time, there wasn't very much that was accessible. I remember I went to some bookstores, and there were maybe a half a dozen fairly old books on the subject that one could find, and a half a dozen different recordings. But about 2 weeks later, I was given a sheet of paper. This is when we still had paper. I was given a workshop flyer on healing with sound and music by someone named Sarah Benson, who incidentally became not only our dear friend, but she's passed on to the angelic realms. But one of my books is dedicated to her. We call her the Divine Mother of Sound Healing. And she's just an extraordinary being. And I'll just share immediately something that she said, because it's so important. The true sound of healing is love. I'm like, wow, okay. So I took this workshop with Sarah, and she placed me in the center of a circle. And I was holding a quartz crystal. And people began to chant my name. And all of a sudden, I was transported out of my body, and I was in this amethyst pyramid. I remember then the light that was coming in was extraordinary. And when I opened my eyes, I thought, wow, I got to find out more about this stuff, meaning sound and also crystals, both of which have been an extraordinary, if you like, combination in my life. I then went on to found the Sound Healers Association, which held monthly meetings featuring doctors, scientists, musicians, spiritual healers, people from throughout the planet that would come and give freely of their time to this group because it was so exciting and so new in terms of manifestation on the planet. And it was quite an amazing education. I then went on to get a degree at Lesley University, master's degree, researching the uses of sound and music for healing. And took my record company, which was the only thing I didn't have to change about my record company was the title. It was, if you will, like a new wave label. We changed it to a new age label, one of the first therapeutic music labels. And the only thing we didn't have to change was the name of the company because it was called Spirit Music. And we just began to put out various things and had people like Don Campbell as one of the first artists, et cetera. And we went on and on. Andi.
Well, speaking of Don Campbell, I don't know if our listeners, he wrote the Mozart Effect, and he too is now on the other side, but he is the one who actually introduced Jonathan and myself, and that was over 25 years ago. And with my background, now I have a very different background than Jonathan, and I grew up in Tennessee. So originally from Minnesota, however, grew up in Tennessee. And my background is as a holistic psychotherapist. And I utilized expressive therapies primarily in my practice. And so because I had known Don forever, and of course he was a giant in the field of sound. And so I was always, invited to his workshops and so forth. And I was always very interested in how sound and vibration affect our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. And then I met Jonathan 25 years ago. We started working, we became very romantically involved, and then we started working together. And we thought, how is it that we can combine my background in holistic psychotherapy and, of course, his pioneering work in sound. And we started working together, collaborating together, teaching together, and we've written several books together. And here we are, over 25 years later, and we are still at it. And we love every minute of it because we know how powerful sound is for the human body, mind, and spirit. And our connections just get enhanced through working with vibration, working with sound. And so it's a little bit of my background, a little bit of Jonathan's background.
And just as a thought, the reason, at least that I'm into sound is simply because I found it to be, and I've studied at the time that I first became, shall we say aware of the aspects of using vibration, higher consciousness to shift and make change. I found that for me, sound was the most effective vehicle. I studied all sorts of different things, from acupuncture to massage therapy to Reiki to chiropractic, etc. But sound was just so all pervasive in terms of being able to shift the body, mind, and spirit.
Well, it's very interesting to hear your journey and the way both sound captured both of you as you were capturing each other.
I love that,
Well
Jim.
done. Well done. Well done. Listen, why don't we jump in into the deep end, as it were. Catherine Alexander has put in the chat that she was actually healed of stage 3 liver cancer and back in 2006 through sound. And sound has been used for healing for millennia. But we just have an example from one of the people that's listening to this session who was actually healed of a serious liver condition, cancer of the liver, through sound.
Well,
so tell us, Jonathan, Andi, your understanding of how does sound heal?
Okay, so Jim, I want to go back to Sound 101, which you basically talked about, which is the fact that the ancients talked about the initial, if you like, energy of creation was the word. In the beginning was the word, and the Lord said, let there be light. Sound creating light, sound preceding light. In the Hindu tradition, they say, Nada Brahman, the world is sound. If you examine the tenets of the different spiritual traditions on the planet, they all have a commonality, that life, the universe, and everything was basically created through the power of vibration and sound. And we find our modern quantum physicists being in agreement with this, that basically everything is in a state of vibration. From the electrons moving around the nucleus of an atom to planets and distant galaxies moving around their sun. They're all putting out a vibration, and if it's putting out a vibration, we can perceive of this, conceptually at least, as being sound. Now, every organ, every bone, every tissue, every part of our body, therefore, is in a state of vibration. We are very much like this orchestra that is playing the suite of the self, the symphony of the self. I'm a violin player and I've lost my sheet music. And all of a sudden I'm playing the wrong notes. Pretty soon the entire string section is playing off because of me. Pretty soon the entire orchestra is playing off because of me. And this is, if you like, because a part of the body has lost its normal, healthy, resonant vibration. And very simply, it's vibrating out of ease, out of harmony. And we say it's diseased. And the idea of using sound for healing is simply, what if we could give that string player back their sheet music? What if we could somehow restore the correct resonant frequency back to the body? And I'm going to jump for just a second and just suggest for those into sound, that sound travels as a wave form, like waves of the ocean. It's measured what they call cycle per second, or hertz. We hear from around 20 of these cycles per second to around 20,000. But I'd like to suggest that just because we can't hear something doesn't mean there isn't a sound being created. Our finny friends in the ocean can create sounds upwards of 180,000 cycles a second, more than 10 times our greatest level of hearing. And, you know, for us, there's nothing happening, but dolphins might be exchanging recipes for tuna noodle casserole, or perhaps the best route through the Bering Strait, or perhaps the communication with the beings from Sirius, all sorts of things. So just because something is not audible doesn't mean that there isn't being a sound created.
And you know, when we're talking about, you know, how sound heals, I think one of the most important aspects is the aspect of intention. You know, the person who wrote, you know, that she was healed from liver cancer, you know, how did that happen? You know, obviously, you know, certain sounds and vibrations were, you know, resonating and healing that part of her body. But intention played, I know, must have played a huge part in it. And many, many years ago, Jonathan created a formula that is so relevant and so important. And that is frequency plus intention equals healing. So the sounds, the frequency, plus our intention coupled together can open that door to healing. And I think that that is such an important piece. And also when we're working with vibration, when we're working with sound and frequencies, there's so many things that are happening in our bodies physiologically. You know, our heart rate is lowered, our breathing slows down and entrains with all those other parts of our body. So there's a lot that contributes to how we heal through sound.
So if I may, I'd like to take everybody back in the Wayback Machine to around the early 1980s when I'm at Lesley University. And I've got a pile of papers about Yo-Hi, and they are all different systems of using sound for healing. I've gotten them from doctors, I've gotten them from spiritual masters, I've gotten them from scientists. And I come from a family of doctors, father, grandfather, brother, all medical doctors who said, okay, I am going to basically correlate and collect all this information and be the first person who's put it all together. Well, I started putting this stuff all together. And first of all, I want to say that I'm using a DOS operating system on my computer at the time. It's a dark screen with amber letters. So this is a while ago. And as I'm looking at this, I realized that the systems didn't line up. You had spiritual master A using a particular set of mantras for the different chakras, and spiritual master B using a completely different set of mantras for the same chakras, or the different set of chakra mantra situations. I'm going, wow, how can this be? Dr. X would be using a particular set of frequencies for one organ. Dr. Y would be using a different set of frequencies for the same organ. They didn't line up. And I am basically in a state of intellectual angst. My head is in my hands. I'm rocking back and forth going, how can this be? How can this be? Because I know that these people are all reporting the truth. Because at the time, it was such a small field. They were just happy to be sharing this information with somebody as enthusiastic with me. Tell me what you know. And all of a sudden I hear this inner voice, and the inner voice says it is not only the frequency, that's the vibrations per second of the sound that creates the effect. It is also the intention of the person making and receiving the sound. And indeed, I wrote down frequency plus intent equals healing. And it was like this light bulb came over me, and I went, wow. So that was in the early 80s, and now 40 years later, it feels more correct than ever. And blessed be, we've got so many different people. Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief. Joe Dispenza, The Placebo Effect. All these people are now talking about intentionality, and I love it. You know, Lynn McTaggart, the intention experiments, how wonderful. Back in the 80s, I'm talking to these scientists and doctors about the importance of intentionality, and they are looking at me like I am from another planet. They may have discovered something, Jim, I'm not sure. But
He is.
But the importance of intentionality, and the real secret is that, once again, it's frequency plus intent equals healing, or whatever you have as a desired outcome. And the bottom line is intention can be and is most often encoded upon the sound. So that, for example, if somebody has a strong belief that a particular sound is going to do something, oftentimes it will. So it's such an interesting phenomena, and an important phenomena for us to believe, because we need to be so expansive and not codified in terms of this sound will resonate this chakra for you, because we're all unique.
Yeah, that's one of our tenets, is that we are all unique vibratory beings. And so the way in which a sound may affect one person will affect another person completely differently. And it's as though when we're talking about how we heal through sound, it's as though that sound rides, that intention rides on that frequency. And so it bypasses. Sound is really a wonderful tool for healing, because it bypasses, so to speak, the left brain, and it just goes right into our body. So oftentimes, if we just set an intention and then forget about it, and that sound is going to pick that vibration of that intention up. And so it's such an important aspect. And I guess I just can't stress it enough, because without that intention, it's just a big piece, and it just is a huge help in healing with vibration, with sound, and we resonate. We always say, hey, I really resonate with him or her, or I really resonate with that. And what we're really saying is that our frequencies are in that moment matching. And so when we are wanting to heal, we put that frequency, that vibration, that intention out.
Right. Just want to suggest, for example, that I know that we've all had the experience of going to a party, and you see someone that perhaps you have some difficulty with, and you go over and you say hello, and they go, lovely to see you again. The word lovely to see you again is, if you like, different than the energy, because you feel like you've been psychically slimed. So I know that, our words can convey our intentions so well. And it's so important that we become aware of how we're using our words, and to speak with love and truth. I mean, just an immediate way of using sound for healing is through our speech, our conversation, and conveying the energy of love and the intention of compassion whenever we can do this, because it's so very, very important. When we talk about, we're all unique vibratory beings. When we do workshops, and we did a lot of them live, and we'd ask these large groups of people, okay, if everything in the universe is in a state of vibration, then penicillin or any pharmaceutical is a vibratory phenomena, or shall we say, rather than single tones, are different frequencies, but these frequencies make up the composite that we call penicillin. So how many of you are allergic to penicillin? And Jim, anywhere from 5 to 20% of an audience will raise their hand, sometimes more. And we'll say, okay, so for 80% of you, penicillin is a healing frequency or frequencies. But for 20% of you, it's toxic. And I find personally this phenomena to be in existence all over the place. I personally haven't found anything except perhaps water, and it even depends on what type of water you're drinking, that is good for everybody, because different people resonate to different things. And I think it's so important for us to have this as an awareness. Does this make sense?
Well, I think it makes eminent sense, and I'd like to probe it for a moment. There's been a number of around the frequencies. I'd like to probe frequencies for a moment, because there's been a number of comments in the chat about COVID and viruses. You mentioned penicillin. And so I'd like to just get your understanding. There's some suggestion by a Nobel laureate around using sound to heal COVID. If sound can heal stage 3 liver cancer, sound could heal COVID. And that leads to the question of frequency. On the one hand, 80% can do penicillin, 20% can't. So we know that different frequencies have different effects. And I'm wondering about your understanding of the kind of frequency or the kind of sound that has the deepest efficacy. I'm thinking, for example, of the ohm. The ohm is considered to be one of those cosmic, all-inclusive, containing sounds that, when uttered, replicates the basic sound of the cosmos itself, and in some fundamental way contains all sounds. So as you think of, let's say COVID, I know for example, you've talked about humming, just humming as a healing sound so that everybody has a different hum. But tell us about, you were going to talk to us about sounds and COVID.
Okay, so
What would be your approach? What
right.
would be your sound practices that we
Jim,
could
there are
embrace?
4 things going on, and this is going to take me the rest of the hour just to speak on this one thing, and I got to share it with Andi.
We have this is great.
Okay, so first of all, with the subject of ohm ultimately is like, if a composite sound, it's almost like white noise composed of all sorts of different frequencies. There's a misunderstanding that ohm is a particular frequency because somebody's taken a tuning fork such as this, marketed as the ohm tuning fork, and people therefore believe it is. But here, ohm, 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 ohm. If ohm was one frequency, I couldn't have made those ohms in a whole lot of different frequencies.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, we're going to talk about humming in a minute, but it's said that in the, if you like, Yoga Sutras, it said that the original sound of creation was pranava, the humming of prana, the humming of energy, and they had to give it a name. They called it Om. That's at least one translation by Swami Satchidananda. But I want to talk about a couple of different people. One of them is a fellow by the name of Royal Rife, who in the early 1900s he worked with radio frequencies, and he used composite radio frequencies. He used 3 different frequencies, not one, but 3 different frequencies. And he was able to see if you like, live viruses and bacteria using a quartz crystal polarized microscope that was way ahead of its time. And he was able then, using these little frequency generators, to find, if you like, the resonant frequency of different specific viruses and cause them to shatter like glass. He called it the death ray, if you like. And that's, if you like, the destructive use of sound, and has continued on now. There's a fellow by the name of Anthony Holland, who's working out of Skidmore with some scientists. And he's doing a very similar thing, shattering cancer cells. Then you have a fellow by the name of Peter Guy Manners, a doctor from England, who used a cymatic instrument that used a composite of 5 different frequencies, which were the, if you like, resonant frequencies of the different organs, different bones, et cetera, and it would reinforce the energy of the field of the organ, putting it to a state of health, and it would cause the intruder to literally dissipate. So there are these 2 different approaches: constructive, Peter Manners, destructive. And I see at some point that they're going to be utilized together. Just as a thought, Andi?
Well, one of the focuses that we have is using our own voice. And so, Jim, when we are ohming or we are humming, there are many physiological benefits that are actually happening in our body. For instance, as I was mentioning earlier, our heart rate is lowered, our blood pressure is lowered, melatonin is released, oxytocin is released. And there is a very, very important molecule that is released called nitric oxide, and nitric oxide is getting a lot of attention, and especially with the whole COVID piece, because the humming, we start up here with our nasal cavity, and nitric oxide is then released. And Jonathan loves to talk about nitric
nitric
oxide.
oxide is, once again, as Andi was saying,
It's so important with this whole thing.
It's a vasodilator, but it's also an antiviral agent. So it's been suggested by different doctors that not only can it be used for the treatment, for example, of sinusitis, inflammation of the sinuses, blocked sinus cavities, but if you hum nasally, and we're going to be doing this in a minute, but we'll talk about the science of it. If you hum nasally, you get the release of nitric oxide. So if you feel anything, because a lot of these nasty critters, without even putting names on them, settle first in the sinus cavity. And if you can dissipate them using your own self-created sounds, what a blessing this is. What a blessing this is. So being able to do that, and just want to also talk about humming is so cool. And we are going to, give this experience to everybody, because we do something called conscious humming. And want to suggest that if anybody is stressed out at any time and place, just taking a couple of deep breaths and then humming for a minute, it'll cause your not only heart rate and respiration to go down, it'll cause your blood pressure to go down to pharmaceutical levels. Here we have our fabulous book, The Humming Effect. It might be backwards, I'm not sure. It doesn't matter, with a great quote.
Oh, there's a
by
great
Bruce Lipton.
quote from Bruce, and I'd love to read that to our audience, because it says, "I highly recommend the humming effect for all those impacted by the stress of the modern world. It is a powerful, non-pharmaceutical prescription for healing that has only positive side effects." And the reason we like to read this and share all the aspects of humming is that it's self-empowering. And as my background as a psychotherapist, wow, what more do we want? We want to teach people how they can step into becoming their own therapist and taking care of themselves.
Yes.
So when you are, in that place of imbalance and feeling stressed, and right now on our planet, in our culture, there is a lot of that happening. And what a blessing to be able to close your eyes and just begin to hum. And once again, we call it conscious humming. And along with that, it's breathing. Someone had asked a question about breath and sound. Well, without our breath, there is no sound. So it's like taking these nice deep breaths and then allowing that hum to come forth, and we become empowered. We begin to feel relaxed. We begin to feel that stress beginning to melt away. And of course, it's releasing all of those beautiful hormones and chemicals as we're doing it. So I kind of, one and one makes two. That's how it happens.
I want to just suggest for everyone who's listening and later, there are two basic ways that sound affects us. One is called psycho-acoustics. That means the sound goes into our ears, into our brain, affecting our heart rate, our respiration, our brain waves, our nervous system. And for example, if I take these tuning forks, which are tuned indeed to the Pythagorean fifth, hit them together and then listen like this, it's a powerful, powerful healing modality. This is psychoacoustics, my voice, listening to music, psychoacoustics. The other way is vibro-acoustics. That's where sound goes into our body on a cellular level. So, for example, if I were to hit these two tuning forks, which are designed to be used on the body, and then place them on the body, they put the frequencies into either the acupuncture meridians or down to a cellular level. In fact, Andi, there's a great quote from the New York Times. I remember the date, February 8th, 1988. But listen to this quote. Sound, shaped into dazzling tool, can make, break, or rearrange molecular structure. You know, if you can make, break, or rearrange molecular structure, what can't you do potentially with sound? So people say, what sort of conditions can you heal? And I was going, well, what can, you know, you are limited only by your thoughts, consciousness, and awareness of how to manifest the correct frequency.
And of course, when we're talking about vibro-acoustics, humming is one of the most powerful vibro-acoustic sound that we can make, that goes right into us on a cellular level. And it's as though we're giving ourselves an internal massage. And so that is just a fabulous vibro-acoustic. And of course, you can listen to healing music, you can listen to sounds in that psycho-acoustic way, but humming, and that's why it was interesting when we had written a couple books and we thought, you know, we want to really get sound out to more and more people out in the mainstream, people who may not quite grok, wait a minute, how is this sound thing connected with healing? And of course, one of the, Jonathan and I, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about what we wanted to do in order to do that. And we thought, okay, our next book is going to be about humming, the most simple, most effective sound that literally everybody can make, from little babies to elderly people. Everyone can hum. And we, of course, have never heard anyone say, you know, I'm just really not a very good hummer. And so there's not a lot of judgment around humming. And I think that's an important part when we are healing, is to, you know, just let go of the judgment. And so humming is a beautiful way to do that.
I mean, it's so interesting because we have been teaching sound for so long, and we go through really complicated, wondrous healing exercises, no question about it. But then we perhaps see an advanced group of these people a year later say, okay, how many of you are doing this as a daily practice? Nobody. I said, okay, because oftentimes people are so judgmental about their voice. And we said, what's the one sound that people are not judgmental about?
It was a pretty easy one to come up with. And it was interesting because, as Jonathan was mentioning, my goodness, you know, there's so many so many mantras and so many different affirmations that you can sound forth. And you know, people forget about them. And we were teaching a lot of them in our workshops. And it was just, wait a minute, we've got to come up with something that is going to be easy, it's going to be effective, and it's going to be healing. And that was conscious humming. And so we like to use the word conscious because that intention, once again, is an important aspect.
Why don't you give us an example of conscious humming so we can actually take away from this session an actual practice?
I will. And listen, I just see people are doing on their chat board. We also, incidentally, at healingsounds.com, we have all these great, and John is a dear friend of ours. So basically we work in conjunction, but at healingsounds.com, we got great also tuning forks. So we want to just, acknowledge that John Beaulieu, Biosonics, Healing Sounds, or a lot of different places. I really think John and I have the best tuning forks. We use a special amalgam. This is not a tuning fork session because we want to focus on using humming, because you don't really need, the reason we also did it was that it was a tool for self-empowerment that everybody's got.
And so once again, we're going to have everyone have an experience of just conscious humming. And there are some components that I want to mention, because one of them is to breathe and to, take some nice deep breaths. And those breaths help to relax our body, and that then supports our sound. So we're going to be breathing, and then we will sound forth with, we'll start out with a simple exercise of just maybe perhaps doing 3 hums. How does that sound, Jonathan?
Right. Now, I'd like to suggest that everybody who's watching actually participate with us. This is not an experience where you listen to us hum. That serves no purpose. But we want you to have the experience of humming with us in this particular manner. We're just going to do 3 hums. And Jim, it was beautiful, the heart coherence meditation that we did. And we'd like to suggest that anytime anybody works with sound or anything, they get into that place of appreciation and gratitude. But then also breathing is so important. A lot of people don't breathe, particularly when they get stressed out. So once again, we want Andi.
Let's just do a very simple exercise right now, and we'll do a longer one later on in the program.
One more quick thing. So the only thing, there's no caveat in terms of humming, except louder is not better, more is not better. There are no good or bad pitches, whatever's comfortable. But the only thing, in order to really hum properly, you have to do one thing, and that's keep your lips closed. Jim, I don't know if we played this game before, but would you turn your volume on just so people know that you're there? Close your mouth, begin to hum, and then pinch your nostrils. You can't hum.
Doesn't work.
You can't hum. And so so most people don't know that. We say, okay, if you didn't know that about the hum, do you think perhaps there are other aspects of the power of the hum that we can share with you? So once again, you got to have your lips closed. We often suggest that you close your eyes because when you do this, we're just going to do 3 simple hums. But when you do this, close your eyes and become aware. First, check yourself out. How are you feeling now? And then after you make the hum, check yourself out for just a couple of seconds. And also we suggest being in silence. Silence is, if you like, the yin to the yang of sound.
So after we do our 3 hums, we will take a moment where we'll be in silence. But for now, let us all close our eyes and just take some nice, deep, what I like to call belly breaths, diaphragmatic breathing. And you can even put your hands on your abdomen to, feel the extension of your belly. But take some nice, deep breaths. And release that breath with a sigh, letting go of anything that is not serving you in this moment. So breathing in, letting that breath out. Take another couple of breaths, and then we will hum 3 times. So eyes closed, breathing in and breathing out. And now, Jonathan, lead us in our 3 hums.
First and 3 hums. Breathing in.
And one more. in silence for a few moments.
Just a second, yeah. Just checking yourself out. Are you feeling any different? And even for ourselves, and we do humming as a daily practice, at least 5 minutes every day, even those 3 hums made a difference for us. Jim, did you notice anything there?
I felt calmer. I felt in my body, and my attention went to my heartbeat.
Nice.
Felt very pacific, very benign.
Where did you feel the hum when you were making it?
Actually, I felt it in my thorax, but I felt the frequency kind of not make my teeth chatter, but I just felt my teeth against one another. I became aware that the frequency was moving through my teeth.
And that's another thing, for example, you could do. Just, you were playing now, close your mouth and don't touch your teeth. Have your mouth just a little bit open. Make that same hum and nasalize a little bit. Okay, and let's do that just as an experiment. Everybody can try that. Taking a nice deep breath, and we'll do 2 of them, and nasalizing, and see if you feel a little difference. And one more. I just brought it down. Okay. Okay.
That takes it up into your head.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And and I have to say that that's interesting that you said that, Jim, because what we can do with intention is, for instance, if someone may have say a headache, you can start to hum and imagine that hum is going into that part of your head that does hurt. If you have, a stomach ache, or if you have any part of your body that feels out of alignment, you can literally, with your hum and with your intention, imagine that hum going into that part of your body. So that's a great tool.
And I noticed somebody saying that they felt a little dizzy. So one of the things that and what happens, that's, if you like, sort of what we call the blissed out effect of humming, which is if you sit there and you do this for a few minutes every day, you get all these neurochemicals, including oxytocin and all this other stuff being released. And so if you do this, you're sitting up straight in a quiet space, you do this for 5 minutes. You do this for 5 minutes, and then we suggest that you be in silence for 2 to 3 minutes after that. And don't try to get up, because oftentimes if you try to get up, you'll be dizzy and be so blissed out. So you want to ground and get back to your body. And also, once again, as we were saying, it is in this time of silence that the real shifts and changes occur on your body.
And when we are in that silence, that gives us the opportunity to listen within. And I have a very interesting factoid here that the word silent and the word listen are anagrams. They each have the exact same letters in them. So when we are in silence, we then can listen. And I always love to share that because it just makes a lot of sense to me. And interesting, because when we were just now humming, of course, melatonin is also released. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you cannot fall back to sleep, start humming. Close your eyes and start breathing and humming, and you'll hopefully go right back to sleep with that melatonin being
and
released.
Let's suggest also that with a combination of pitch and intention, you can change where you are resonating the sound with your intention. And this is so cool because if you want to resonate it in your head for a particular reason, if you want to do it in your throat, if you want to put it down into your chest or even your stomach, you can with a slight variant. So the more that you hum and practice humming, the more adept you'll be. You know, it's interesting. Humming zippity doo-dah is great because we hum when we're happy. It's a happy sound. Children hum, the elderly hum, everybody can hum. But conscious humming, if you like, brings a new amplification of the power of the hum.
And in our book, The Humming Effect, we have a lot of different exercises that you can do. And you can even go into an advanced yogic technique called Bhramari Pranayama. And all that is humming with our eyes closed, and humming with our ears, you know, plugged up. And that enhances the hum to an even greater degree. And some of our listeners might want to try that at some point.
And interestingly enough, something I wanted to talk about, because in the humming effect, excuse me, in the humming effect, we do have a chapter in Bhramari Pranayama, and one of the, if you like, effects of that is supposedly it's useful for Alzheimer's. Now, this is not a claim or anything like that, but we found it so interesting because we also have a chapter called the humming hypothesis. And this stems from way back in my work when I was working on a PhD project, which I didn't complete. But the idea was creating neurogenesis, new, if you like, neural synaptic connections through mechanical vibrations of self-created sound. And we have a whole chapter on how, on the, if you like, the physics and the physiological aspects of how this can happen. And I trust at some point there will be research, because as a story, Andi's mom had a stroke. And we noticed her speech was a little bit off. We were talking to her on the phone. We both read voices. And she knew that we were into sound. So I said, Ma Betty, that's what I call her. I said, can you find out from your doctor where the stroke was? And would you hum to that area in your head for a few minutes each day? And she was a good sport. She said, sure.
Even though she wasn't so sure what we were talking about. Right. And she was about 89 at the time. And she said, humming into my brain. Well, sure, I'll try that, kids.
Right, but her speech was a little slurred, if you like. First day, no effect. Second day, nothing. Third day, her speech was getting better. By the fourth day, she was back to normal. Now, perhaps this was just coincidence, but we've spoken to some doctors and they think they're, you know, causation does not mean correlation necessarily, and vice versa. But we think that, you know, it could well be, because we've known so many people who have anecdotally had wondrous experiences working with neurological imbalances using humming. And unfortunately, a lot of research is yet to happen. People make claims that have not necessarily been researched and may or may not be true. But I'll just tell you about last week, I spoke to a scientist over in England who works with cymatics, which is the, if you like, science of vibration, who had done these experiments with blood. And he'd actually done these experiments with blood. His name was John Stuart Reed. And he basically took blood and then had people sound with intentionality. And what happened was that it was literally, without going into detail, it was, number one, able to rejuvenate the blood. And number two, they put some of the blood in a Faraday cage, Jim, and it was separated, no sound, nothing. And the blood also was able to rejuvenate because people were focusing their intention on the blood rejuvenating. They did experiments like that without that happening, and the blood simply disintegrated. Mm-hmm. So that's, you know, I mean, if you like, I think this is about, if not more important than Masaru Emoto's work, working with water crystals that had different frequencies and intention on them, and they created different shapes. This work with blood, because and he was literally, it's very, it's a simple concept. What is the effect of blood, of sound and music, and sound and intention on blood? But nobody's researched that yet. So there's a lot of simple stuff that we may find is groundbreaking, and I'm really looking forward to that happening in the future.
Well, this is beautiful. This is truly beautiful. The chat has been very active. Apparently, there's a documentary, Alive Inside, on the healing powers of music with dementia and Alzheimer's. And you mentioned the Mozart effect, about the right and left brain harmonization. And are you aware of any other experiments or research that is showing the efficacy of sound on healing?
Well, we
And
have
that
a
would be
whole lot in the humming effect. We talk about the physiological stuff, and this is real. This is peer-reviewed stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it's nitric oxide or the dilation of the blood vessels, et cetera, et cetera. The other stuff hasn't, for the most part, yet been researched. But it doesn't mean it won't be. It's an interesting phenomenon because the power of sound.
And your understanding and your experience, because I know you wrote a book on chakra frequencies.
Yeah.
That the humming is the same. It's the directional intention of your mind centering the humming, say, in your root chakra as opposed to your crown chakra or your heart chakra. So where you're placing, the humming stays the same, but your intention places it in different parts of your body, and the chakras then absorb the same sound and intention and presumably calibrate it for the frequency of that particular energy center. Is that a correct understanding? How do you understand the way one sound can activate all the different chakras?
Okay, so what you're talking about is really true, but I think also there's a relationship between pitch as well as intention. So if you work with the two of them, it amplifies them. So in other words, a high range E sound, and I'll just do it now. That's hitting my head. I'll do a low range O sound. Oh, that's hitting here. So, pitch does, and if you walk into a disco or a nightclub, the bass is going to be affecting you here, and oftentimes the high frequencies are there. So there's also seems to be a relationship between pitch and intention and the resonance. But the other thing, which is very advanced, and I'm not going to go here now except to suggest that there's a phenomena of sound. Yes, folks, this happens every time you hear a sound, unless it's a sine wave, which is created in laboratory. Every time a sound is created, you're actually hearing multitude composite frequencies that are being simultaneously created, called harmonics. And harmonics are geometric, multiple relationships of a single tone. And they occur whenever a sound is being created. My very first book was called Healing Sounds, the Power of Harmonics. And I'm hoping someday that people begin to understand harmonics, if you like, are the color of sound. They are responsible for the timbre of sound, for the different instruments sounding the different ways. That's because different harmonics are most audible. Somebody was mentioning the fact that every voice is different. Every voice print is different. That's because the harmonics of our voices are all different. I'm now having an artist work on a histogram, which simply is a illustration of two different instruments and the two primary harmonics, the many different primary harmonics that occur with two different instruments, like a violin and a flute. Because all of a sudden you can see, wow, this is happening simultaneously, same note, different harmonics, creating the different sounds. And this happens when we make sound. So the whole concept of single tones being healing doesn't happen really in nature.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's so fascinating. You know, again, back to the Om, that there's one sound that contains all the sounds. And I would imagine it would stand to reason that your own hum is your specific signature Om.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
Beautifully
that
put.
sound that resonates to your physiology and your psycho-emotionality. And that if you then connect it with intention, as you say, modulating the pitch, you can do some quite specific kind of acoustic surgery on yourself.
I love that, Jim. Acoustic surgery. Absolutely.
Bioacoustic surgery. Okay.
There we go.
Bioacoustic surgery.
We've
There
got
you
a
go.
new term here.
Right. Or,
There you go.
rather than surgery, which is that the destructive aspect of sound, maybe bioacoustic resonance, therefore, by causing whatever it is to vibrate back in health and causing whatever was imbalanced simply to turn into light and dissipate.
Yeah. And just to broaden it for a second, because it just popped in the chat right at the time it popped into my own mind. You know, sound affects the world around us. Sound affects the plants. You know, you mentioned earlier, Jonathan, in your narrative of how you kind of got to sound. You know, you play rock and roll music, you know, hard rock, and plants kind of wither. You play Mozart or Beethoven, and plants flourish. So the acoustics that we make out into the world through our music is having an effect on the rest of the world.
Can I talk about that particular experiment for a second? Because that one is really, people go, oh, this woman, it's Dorothy Redlich, she was from Denver. She did this experiment, The Secret Life of, no, it wasn't The Secret Life of Plants, the effect of music on plants. And she played rock and roll, it killed them. She played this and that, it was good. I'd like to suggest that, fortunately or unfortunately, I knew a whole lot of people who listened to Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, and whatnot. It depends. And they had thriving plants in their house. And I'd like to suggest that this woman's belief that rock and roll would kill them really affected the plant because they wanted to please her. There's a fellow by the name of Cleve Baxter who did a lot of work with plants and polygraphs. And he found that the plants want to please people.
But and I want to jump in and say that when that Jimi Hendrix or Led Zeppelin music was playing, the person playing it was loving it. So all of that energy was going out, and that was what was affecting those plants. So you're right, Jim. Our energy field interfaces constantly through sound around us.
So right, we like to say the music per se; it's the energy and the intent of the musician that is determining the healing quality of the sound.
Yes.
I mean, how much more beautiful? All you need is love. And in the end, the love you take is equal to the love you make. That's rock and roll, but that's incredible. I mean, by gosh and by golly, that, what an incredible mantra form to put out into the planet. As we're talking about this, we want to talk about planetary healing with sound. And we all, as we're making a sound together, on an etheric level, on a quantum level, we're resonating together, particularly if we have a focused consciousness. Every year we do an event called World Sound Healing Day, where literally thousands of people throughout our planet make sound, make music, projected to the Gaia consciousness, the Gaia matrix, the energy of the planet to shift and change the vibrational levels. And yes, I don't like to talk about the results of this, but, it's been done through things like, people have measured the Schumann resonance and Global Consciousness Project and all this other stuff. And it's, there are indications that this stuff is real. There are indications that global meditations definitely do, and global soundings definitely do affect global heart coherence pulses definitely do. It's real. Because we are interconnected, bottom line. And sound, as you know, in the different traditions, but particularly there's the, if you like, body, mind, and spirit, or the heart and the mind. And then the connecting link is sound, is speech over here. So sound is a great amplifying current. It's the reason, if you like, from our perspective, that the different prayers on our planet are vocalized, they're whispered, chanted, spoken, sung, but sound amplifies the power of our intention. It focuses our intention. It's so simple, and yet it's so real.
And one of the things that we work with a lot, and Jim, at the beginning when you worked with heart math and did that meditation, we do work with heart math a lot and bring in those beautiful energies of compassion and gratitude and loving kindness. And in our meditation, then we put our sound on to those beautiful aspects of our consciousness. And we find that it even amplifies that energy around our heart even more through holding compassion, holding love, but then sounding forth with that.
And as we're thinking, our friend, for example, Kathleen Riley, she's doing a lot of stuff with coherent musicians, etc. And I really think, that if you're a musician listening, if you're creating music and putting the intention of love in, it'll be not only encoded upon the recording, but received by the different people. I have a number of different award-winning recordings, and they're all ones such as Reiki chants that are used by a lot of different people. And literally people listen to it and they have, if like it really assists not only heart-brain coherence, but it's been used for the blood experiments as well. And it does, if you like, rejuvenate the blood. So there's, the right music can also be really healing. But once again, we are unique vibratory beings. Got to find what works for you.
Right. And Jim, if we have time, if we have the time, it is allowed, we love to do a heart-brain coherence meditation using sound with our audience.
Sure. Well, why don't we do that as our close for this particular session, because we're getting close to that time. So why don't you just lead us into a closing heart coherence meditation, and then I'll say a few words about tomorrow's session.
Great. And we're going to do 5 or 7.
Let's just do 5, honey.
We'll do 5 hums. Everyone, but you got to join in. It's not about, it's not about listening to us. It's about experiencing it yourself and co-creating this. So let's also, as we're doing this, tap into the field of everyone who's sounding, the energetic field, and everyone who ever will do this at one point. It's there. We can draw it in. We can resonate with it. We can vibrate with it. We can entrain with it. Andi, my dear?
Yes. So let us begin. And we can begin by closing our eyes. And once again, we are going to focus on our breathing. We're going to take some nice deep breaths, breathing in and gently releasing that breath, breathing in and breathing out. And as we're focusing on our breathing, breathing in and breathing out, imagine or visualize that you're breathing in and out through the area of your heart. Breathing in and out through your heart, knowing, remembering that it is love that breathes each breath. It is love that causes each beat of our heart. And as we're breathing in and out through our heart, call to mind something or someone, an experience, something that has brought you a great deal of appreciation, gratitude, something that you feel so much appreciation and love toward or for. It might be another person, perhaps a beautiful sunset, even a beloved pet, but you are feeling this appreciation and gratitude. As you're breathing in and out through your heart, that electromagnetic field around your heart is expanding, getting larger and larger, and connecting with all the love and all the heart energy always available. And now in this beautiful space of gratitude and appreciation, Jonathan will lead us in 5 hums.
And as we do this, visualize a holographic image of the earth floating in front of you. And as you're humming, you're encoding the earth with this wonderful pink and gold energy of love and compassion. And it's literally shifting and changing and raising the vibrational rate of every sentient being on our planet, raising it and elevating it so we can be in light and love through sound. Taking a breath and sounding forth with the first of these hums.
And one more. And being in silence for a few moments, listening to our inner wisdom.
And continuing the visualization, seeing the earth, seeing it being permeated by this lovely pink gold energy and all beings being shifted. What a blessing.
And when you feel ready, you can very gently begin to come back into your room, the space where you're sitting, and very gently open your eyes, coming back.
Well, I want to thank you. I really enjoyed that, Elise.
think we all did. I think we all did. You've been magnificent today, both of you. Thank you. Now, just two quick things. What is your website? I'll put it in the chat.
Oh,
'Cause I think there's a lot of people that would love to get in touch with you and, maybe have a consultation or something like that. Do you do that?
occasionally we do.
But we have a lot of fabulous tools on our website, a lot of free downloads and stuff, because it's been up for about 20 years, and it's designed to really assist.
What's the website?
The website is Healing Sounds.
One word.
Sounds has an S at the end. HealingSounds.com. Very easy. HealingSounds.com. And there's a lot of, Jonathan was just mentioning, we have a lot of free downloads where people can work on their chakras with different sounds. And of course, we have all of our tuning forks.
A great blog,
and
some
we have
stuff to work with
book thing.
COVID, et cetera.
Yeah.
No promises.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you for letting us mention that, Jim.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, I sure feel better.
Good. Yay. And it has been our pleasure and our delight to have been with you today, and
Thank you.
all of you out there in the cyberland. It's really great. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I've been doing ohms for decades, and I find it one of the most therapeutic things that I do is just your own natural sound reverberating through your body with the intent to heal and to love. And it's a beautiful way to clean out the carburetors, as they say.
I like that.
So Andi, Jonathan, thank you so much. And I recommend healingsounds.com, everyone. Go on that website and check out the downloads and check out the tuning forks, because it's the simplest thing in the world to do. You don't have to go to a doctor. You don't have to buy anything at the pharmacy. You just have to organize intention through your own natural sound. And it could be the most powerful healing technique out there. And it's available to anybody, anytime. And we've had two people who've mastered their own lives through sound and are now sharing it with the world. So Andi, Jonathan, I thank you. Thank you very deeply.
Jim, it's been our pleasure. Thank you. And everybody who's been resonating with us. Sound can literally, with our light, our love, and our sound, we can make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So many blessings of love and light through sound to you, Jim, and to each and every one of our beautiful guests and audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And then tomorrow, we're going to be continuing our honoring of Stan Groff, who's turning 90 this year. And we will be turning to an aspect that actually is very related to what Andi and Jonathan have been saying, to his whole discovery of archetypal astrology. And it was a very interesting experience that he and Rick Tarnas had in the 1980s, late 70s and 80s at Esalen, when, as you know, Stan was doing a lot of the research on LSD, the therapeutic effects of LSD, and then he developed the holotropic breath work when LSD was made illegal. But when he was doing the pioneering work on LSD, he realized that some people would have good trips and some people would have bad trips. And he couldn't figure out what determined whether a person would have a positive or negative experience on the LSD. Some people would take it over the weeks, some people once, and he tried every way he could possibly find to make a determination of what determined the quality of the LSD experience. And then one day someone suggested to him, I think you should consider the person's astrological chart. And Stan's first instinct was, what on earth would your astrology chart have to do with the quality of your LSD experience? But he started to work with Rick Tarnas, and they did literally tens of thousands of charts. And what they discovered is that where you are in your astrological chart determines precisely whether you're going to have a good trip or a bad trip. And it blew their minds. But it's back to the wisdom of the ancients. Everything is interconnected. And just like the frequency of sound reverberates out to the farthest recess of the cosmos and back, and everything that is has sound, so the sounds and the movements of the planets in our solar system, with both the electromagnetic frequencies, the gravitational frequencies, and the sound frequencies, are affecting everything that we are doing every moment of every day. And that's why the original science was astrology, because the ancients understood that where the moon is, where Saturn is, where Venus is, all have effects, archetypal effects on human attitudes and behavior, including the quality of a psychedelic experience. That's how fine-tuned reality actually is. And so tomorrow with Stan and Brigitte and Bricka Tarnas and others, we're going to look at his exploration of archetypal astrology and the relationship of the planetary alignments with human behavior and human well-being. So that's tomorrow on Humanity Rising. But Andi, Jonathan, you've given us a masterful representation of the intricacy of sound, just like the intricacy of our relationships with the planetary alignments. We're in an implicate universe. We're in an intricate universe. And that's why Pythagoras, he coined the term cosmos, because when he understood how number and geometry and sound and music all are interconnected, he says, we're not in a universe, we're in a cosmos. And what a cosmos means in Greek is a jewel. We're actually, according to Pythagoras, as we've heard today, he says the entire universe is a cosmos because the entire cosmos is a poem. It's a sound. It's a song that it is singing, out of which being emerges and returns. That's the hum that unites all of life together. So Andi, Jonathan, thank you.
Oh, Jim, thank you.
Blessings. Thank you.
We'll see you all again tomorrow, everyone, on Humanity Rising, same time, same station, for Stan Groff tomorrow. Bye for now.
Bye for now. So we.
Okay.